The war started 3 weeks ago. You're in your rural property, perimeter secure, supplies stocked. Then 15 people walk up your access road. 3 of them armed. They stop 50 yards out. The man in front says they're from the next valley. They want to trade. Or maybe they're scouting your defenses. Or maybe they're desperate allies who'll remember you refused them. You've got weapons. You've got people. What you don't have is anyone who can read this correctly. Your neighbor is asking if we shoot. Your son has his rifle up. You've got 10 seconds to decide. Negotiate and maybe get the insulin your wife needs. Refuse and start a blood feud. Shoot first and become what you prepared to survive against. You spent 50 grand on gear. 0 on the person who knows how to handle this without bullets. Every prepper I know has the same delusion. You think you can do this alone. You've got gear, training, YouTube education. You think that makes you self-sufficient. It doesn't. It makes you a corpse with nice equipment. Here's what nobody wants to admit. Humans didn't evolve as lone wolves. We evolved as specialized social operators. The hunter didn't build the shelter. The farmer didn't forge weapons. Even Navy SEALs operate in teams with specialized roles. Medic, breacher, communications, sniper. Nobody does everything. But the survival industry sold you a lie. They told you that with enough gear and enough videos, you could be the medic and the mechanic and the farmer and the security specialist. You can't. And the first place that fantasy kills you is medical. You need a combat medic. Not a first aid certification. Not a wilderness medicine course. Not someone who watched trauma videos on YouTube. You need someone who has actually kept people alive when they should have died. And here's the difference. Your first aid kit has bandages and aspirin. A real medic can perform emergency surgery. You know tourniquets. They know shock management, IVs, antibiotics, wound debridement, and life-or-death triage under pressure. Let's talk about what actually kills in collapse scenarios. Infection. A simple cut becomes cellulitis. Cellulitis becomes sepsis. Sepsis becomes organ failure and death in 12 to 24 hours. Your antibiotic ointment won't stop it. You need intravenous antibiotics, fluid management, and someone who knows the difference between early and late-stage septic shock. Compound fractures, childbirth complications, appendicitis, gunshot wounds, internal bleeding. These aren't scenarios you can YouTube your way through. These require hands-on experience, surgical knowledge, and the ability to make rapid decisions when someone is dying in front of you. Where do you find this person? Paramedics with 10 years in the field, combat medics with deployment experience, ER nurses who've worked trauma centers, surgical techs who've assisted in hundreds of operations. These people exist, but they're not advertising their skills because they understand operational security. And here's what disqualifies someone: a first aid card, a CPR certification, medical prepping videos, the phrase, "I can handle basic stuff." Basic stuff doesn't kill you. It's the non-basic stuff. And when it hits, YouTube is useless. Medical expertise keeps you alive. But staying alive isn't the same as staying operational. Your generator dies. Your water system fails. Your solar array shorts out. Now what? That first aid kit can't fix voltage problems. You survived the gunshot. The infection didn't kill you. Now your generator dies. Water pump seizes, solar array shorts, and starts smoking. Your YouTube education just ran out. You need an electrical and mechanical systems engineer. Not a handyman. Not someone who's pretty good with tools. You need someone who understands system theory, load calculations, electrical code, hydraulics, and combustion diagnostics. Someone who can troubleshoot failures you can't even identify. Here's the difference between a handyman and an engineer. A handyman can replace parts. An engineer can diagnose why the part failed in the first place. A handyman knows what to do when things work. An engineer knows what to do when everything's broken and the manual doesn't cover it. Let's talk about what actually happens. Your inverter keeps tripping. Is it the inverter, battery bank, charge controller, wire gauge too small, ground fault? You start swapping parts. You're guessing. Every wrong guess costs equipment, and potentially starts fires. Water pressure drops. Pump, pressure tank, air in lines, check valve, sediment. You replace the expensive pump. Problem persists because it was the pressure switch. $600 wasted and still no water. These systems interact. Your solar array feeds a charge controller. The charge controller charges batteries. The batteries feed an inverter. The inverter powers your loads. One weak link kills the entire chain. And if you don't understand voltage drop, wire ampacity, and system integration, you'll burn your house down trying to figure it out. Where do you find this person? Industrial maintenance technicians with 10 years in manufacturing plants, power plant operators who understand grid-scale systems, millwrights who've installed and maintained heavy machinery, marine engineers who've kept systems running at sea, HVAC technicians who understand refrigeration, electrical, and fluid dynamics. What disqualifies someone? They can fix their car. They watch DIY videos. They're handy around the house. That's not enough. You need someone who's kept critical infrastructure operational when failure meant people died or millions in losses. This person is a force multiplier. They keep your medics' equipment working. They keep your security systems powered. They keep everyone's preps operational. Without them, you're just camping with expensive gear that's slowly breaking. You've got medicine, you've got infrastructure, you're alive and operational. But it's month 6. Your freeze-dried food is running low. Your garden failed because you planted at the wrong time in depleted soil. And you're about to learn that growing food and producing food are completely different skills. Month 8. Stockpile is 60% gone. You tried gardening. Rabbits ate everything. Tomatoes got blight. You planted too late. Frost killed the rest. Now what? You need an agricultural production specialist, not someone with a successful garden, not a homesteader with an Instagram account. You need someone who has actually fed themselves from the land for multiple years without grocery stores. Here's the math that kills amateurs. One person needs 2,000 calories daily. That's 730,000 per year. A pound of potatoes is 350 calories. You need over 2,000 pounds per person just for baseline calories. That's before protein, fats, vitamins, or crop failures. And potatoes are among the most calorie-dense crops available. Most backyard gardens produce maybe 200 pounds of mixed vegetables in a good year. You're not even close to feeding yourself. You're supplementing a grocery budget. That's not the same as production at scale. Here's what real food production requires. Soil management. Your garden soil is depleted after year 1 if you don't understand crop rotation and amendment. Pest control without chemicals. Deer, rabbits, insects, birds, fungus, blight. They will destroy your crops unless you know what you're doing. Season extension. You need to grow food for 12 months, not just summer. That means cold frames, hoop houses, root cellaring, and understanding microclimates. Seed saving. You can't buy seeds after collapse. You need to know how to save viable seeds from your harvest. Most crops are not self-pollinating. If you don't understand plant genetics and isolation distances, your seeds won't grow true. Food preservation at scale. Canning, fermenting, drying, cold storage. Incorrect canning causes botulism. Bad fermentation poisons you. This isn't a hobby. This is survival. Where do you find this person? Small-scale farmers with at least 5 years of continuous production. Amish or Mennonite communities where people actually live this way. Agricultural extension agents with field experience. Proven homesteaders who've documented multiple seasons of successful harvests. What disqualifies someone? One good garden season. YouTube homesteading education. I grew up on a farm, but hasn't farmed in 20 years. This skill set takes years to develop. You cannot learn it under pressure. Seasons don't care about your timeline. You're fed. Systems work. You're medically stable. But other people know you have all this. 3 families showed up yesterday asking for help. One of them had guns. You let them leave. But they know where you are. And you have no idea if they're coming back with more. Armed strangers at your gate. Your son has his rifle up. Your neighbor is asking if we shoot. You've got 5 seconds to make a call. This is where the tactical fantasy dies. You need a defensive security specialist, not a gun collector. Not someone who plays airsoft on weekends, not a vet who was a supply clerk. You need someone who understands defensive architecture, threat assessment, and the brutal truth that violence is security failure. Here's what real security looks like. Perimeter design that creates overlapping fields of fire and eliminates dead zones. Early warning systems that detect threats at 200 yards, not 20. Watch rotations that prevent fatigue. Patrol patterns that cover vulnerabilities. Rules of engagement that prevent friendly fire and legal catastrophes. The 99-to-1 rule. 99% of security is deterrence and detection. 1% is response. If you're shooting, you already failed. You failed to detect early. You failed to deter effectively. You failed to de-escalate. Every bullet fired is an admission that your defensive strategy was inadequate. Most violence can be avoided. A properly hardened perimeter with visible defenses tells potential threats that attacking costs more than it gains. Early detection gives you time to negotiate or prepare. De-escalation protocols turn 90% of confrontations into conversations. This isn't cowardice. This is force conservation. Where do you find this person? Infantry with deployment experience who ran actual security operations. Military police who protected bases under threat. Executive protection specialists who kept people alive in hostile environments. Security consultants who designed defensive systems for compounds. What disqualifies someone? Owns a lot of guns. Talks about when SHTFL. Was in the military but never saw combat or ran security. Thinks every threat requires a violent response. Security is boring. It's watching. It's waiting. It's preventing contact before it happens. Historical reality. Fortified positions aren't overrun by direct assault. They're starved out. They're bypassed. They're taken because the defenders failed at logistics or morale, not because the walls fell. Your security specialist understands this. Defense is about making yourself too expensive to attack. You've got defense. You can detect threats and deter most conflicts. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit. The biggest threat to your survival community won't come from outside your perimeter. It'll come from inside, from the people you trust, from psychological breakdown and social fracture. And most preppers have zero plan for this. 2 of your people are fighting. Started over missing rations. Now it's accusations, threats, factions forming. Your 15-person group is splitting apart. Someone's going to get violent. You try to calm it down. You fail. Because you're not a counselor. And you're learning what kills more survival groups than starvation or bullets. Each other. You need a mental health professional. Not a life coach. Not someone who's a good listener. You need a licensed therapist or clinical social worker who's handled severe mental illness and crisis intervention. Here's what nobody talks about. Psychological casualties will vastly exceed physical ones. Trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety, paranoia, group psychosis. The timeline is predictable. Weeks 3 through 8, acute stress reactions hit. Month 6, depression sets in. Year 2, you're dealing with complex trauma and potential psychotic breaks. In a 20-person group under sustained collapse stress, 60 to 80% will experience significant mental health deterioration within the first year. That's not speculation. That's disaster psychology research. That's what happens when humans face prolonged threat with no relief. What this person does: crisis intervention when someone's suicidal or violent, conflict mediation before disputes become blood feuds, recognizing deterioration patterns before someone snaps. De-escalation when tensions peak. Group therapy to process collective trauma. Individual counseling for PTSD, depression, and anxiety disorders. What they prevent: suicides, internal violence, group fracture, scapegoating, leadership challenges that turn into coups, Cult dynamics where charismatic members manipulate others. The slow descent into Lord of the Flies tribalism that destroys communities from inside. Historical reality. The Donner Party didn't fail because of snow. They failed because psychological breakdown led to social collapse. Antarctic expeditions failed when crew cohesion fractured. Cults implode from internal psychology, not external pressure. Siege psychology shows that groups under stress turn on each other long before external threats kill them. Where do you find this person? Licensed therapists with trauma specialization. Clinical social workers who've worked with severe cases. Experienced chaplains who've done crisis counseling. People with formal training and years of practice, not armchair psychology. What disqualifies someone? People always come to me with their problems. I'm a good listener. No formal education or clinical experience. You can't learn this under pressure. It takes years of training and supervised practice. You can keep your people from killing each other. But there's still two problems. You need to deal with other groups, and you need to know what's actually happening beyond your perimeter. Both require roles that don't even exist in the prepper mindset. A neighboring group shows up. They want to trade food for medicine. Or maybe it's an ultimatum. Without a skilled negotiator, you either get exploited or start unnecessary conflict. This role prevents 90% of violence. Nobody teaches it. You need a negotiator. Someone who reads people, understands power dynamics, and can assess threats through conversation. Someone who knows when to walk away and when to make a deal that benefits both sides without showing weakness. Why you need this? You will deal with other groups. Trade for critical supplies you can't produce. Information sharing about threats and opportunities. Threat assessment through diplomatic contact. Mutual defense pacts. These interactions determine whether you thrive or get conquered. What this person does. Reads body language and micro-expressions to detect deception. Understands cultural intelligence and how different groups operate. Negotiates without triggering ego or aggression. Builds alliances that create network effects. Gathers intelligence through social interaction. Knows when a deal is genuine and when it's a setup. Where to find them? Experienced salespeople who've closed high-stakes deals. Lawyers with negotiation backgrounds, union organizers who've brokered agreements under pressure, hostage negotiators, community organizers who've built coalitions, people with track records of de-escalating conflicts and building consensus. What disqualifies someone? Aggressive personality, needs to win every argument, poor listener, zero emotional intelligence, can't read a room. This isn't about dominance. It's about creating outcomes where both sides walk away satisfied. The economic reality. Violence is expensive. Every fight costs resources, lives, and future opportunities. Trade is cheap. Skilled negotiation turns potential enemies into trading partners. This person is a force multiplier because they prevent wars before they start. You can negotiate. But negotiation only works if you know what's real. If you're making decisions based on rumors and panic, you'll negotiate yourself into slavery or start wars over nothing. Which brings us to the final three roles. Conflicting reports. Someone says there's a government convoy 20 miles north offering aid. Someone else says it's a trap. They're confiscating supplies. Your group is paralyzed by uncertainty. You don't know what's real. And decisions based on bad information get people killed. In collapse, information determines who thrives and who disappears. You need an intelligence analyst. Someone who gathers information, verifies sources, detects patterns, and assesses threats before they materialize. What they do. Information collection through multiple channels. Source verification to separate truth from rumor. Pattern recognition to identify threats early. Disinformation detection to avoid manipulation. Threat assessment that enables strategic decisions instead of panicked reactions. Specific capabilities. SIGINT for radio intercept. OSINT for Open Source Intelligence Gathering. HUMINT for Human Intelligence Networks. Verification protocols that test information accuracy. This person is a force multiplier because they prevent ambushes, identify opportunities, and give you strategic advantage. Where to find them? Military intelligence with operational experience, investigative journalists who've tracked complex stories, researchers with analytical backgrounds, ham radio operators with SIGINT training, people who've actually done intelligence work, not armchair analysts, the second role nobody discusses. The teacher. Skills die with people unless they're systematically transferred. In 20 years, children become your workforce. Without someone who knows how to teach, document, and create apprenticeship systems, your community's knowledge dies with the first generation. What this person does: curriculum design for practical skills, hands-on teaching that actually transfers capability, apprenticeship management, documentation that preserves critical knowledge. This isn't babysitting. This is civilizational continuity. Where to find them? Experienced teachers who can teach practical skills, not just theory. Master craftsmen with teaching ability. Professors who've actually trained people successfully. 8 roles. But there's one more. And it's the role that determines whether you have 8 specialists standing around or an actual functioning community. All 8 specialists present. Uncoordinated chaos. The medic needs the engineer to fix equipment. The farmer needs security for perimeter patrol. The counselor is overwhelmed. Nobody knows who's in charge of what. Having the people isn't enough. Someone has to architect how they work together. Role 9. The network architect. The community organizer who coordinates specialists, allocates resources, resolves conflicts, maintains communication, and sets strategic priorities. This role requires a rare combination. Leadership without ego. Systems thinking. Emotional intelligence. The ability to delegate and empower rather than control and micromanage. Where to find them? Project managers with proven track records. Military officers who actually led well, not just commanded. Nonprofit directors who built functional organizations. Community organizers who created coalitions. People with demonstrated ability to make groups function. This person makes 9 people function like 30. Without them, you have specialists standing around. With them, you have force multiplication through coordination. So why doesn't anyone teach this? Because they can't sell it to you. You can't patent community. You can't trademark trust. You can't create recurring subscription revenue from friendship. The survival industry sells gear because individualist preppers buy forever. Networked preppers build once and they're done. Same pattern as every suppressed technology. Permanent solutions threaten profit models. Here's what you do. Audit your current network against these 9 roles. Identify gaps. Start recruiting now. You cannot build trust under pressure. Focus on competence and character, not politics or friendship. The grid goes down. The missiles fly. The only thing standing between you and collapse isn't your stockpile. It's the relationships you built before you needed them. WW3 survivors won't have the biggest bunkers. They'll have the right 9 people. Start building your circle today.